Thank you, Brother Terence. Very good morning to everyone, brothers and sisters in Dhamma. I'm actually very happy to be able to share the Dhamma with you again this morning. Okay, so before we begin with today's Dhamma talk, perhaps we should place our palms together and pay our deepest and highest respect and homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One, the perfectly self-awakened one, whom through his great effort and sacrifice, he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that has enabled us to practice the true Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, a very good morning again, brothers and sisters in Dhamma. Okay, before I begin with today's Dhamma sharing, perhaps let me just begin by asking everyone here, actually, how many of us actually will consider ourselves, as Vesak Day Buddhist, or perhaps what we can say, or even Katina Day Buddhist, because when I actually make reference to Vesak Day Buddhist or Katina Day Buddhist, actually I'm specifically I'm actually making reference to Buddhists, who actually they only visit temples and monasteries, only on these specific occasions, to perform meritorious deeds, but on normal days, perhaps due to their busy schedules, or they're busy attending to their work or businesses, they do not actually make the effort to perhaps visit monasteries and temples, and maybe they also have this conception, that performing merits on these special occasions will be more meritorious compared to other days. So, maybe on Vesak or Katina Day, then they will, visit and throng the temples, offering food to monks, and also, offering robes to the monks, only on these specific occasions. So that is the question we have for us, in terms of the Buddhist community currently, and of course, another category of Buddhism would be Buddhism where we actually ask certain Buddhists, when they will actually practice the Dhamma, more seriously, when do they actually make the effort, to practice the Dhamma? Then I myself actually asked certain Buddhists this question, whether they actually make the effort, to actually practice the Dhamma as taught by the Blessed One. And the answer given by most Buddhists is, well, I've got commitments, nowadays. Perhaps, when my daughter has got married, or perhaps my son has got married, then, I have more time for me to practice the Dhamma, or perhaps they might say, perhaps when I actually have reached my retirement age, then I'll have more time at my disposal. Then I'll have more time to devote to Dhamma practice, and also to perform meritorious deeds, But then they may also say, yeah, it's not the right time yet, and I've got so many duties, and I also have got my personal debt, I've got my housing loan, my car loan, perhaps after I've finished settling all my debts, then, I would actually be able to practice the Dhamma, more effectively, and be able to devote my time to the Dhamma. And of course, there's also another situation that's currently, based on what I observe, especially when it comes to meditation, when we ask someone, whether they actually devote their time to practice the Dhamma, then the answer given by most Buddhists is nowadays, different teachers actually teach different meditation methods, for example, some teach, rising, falling, meditation, and some actually teach, perhaps, anapanasati, in terms of breathing meditation. Some actually teach, you should just watch whatever that arises, in terms of rising and falling, whatever that arises, whatever that ceases, just observe, and you don't have to think about it, there's no contemplation required. And some, of course, also teach that there's no need to actually study the sutta, you just have to sit down cross-legged and just watch your mind as well as your body in terms of what arises and what ceases. That's all. You don't have to think about it, and there's of course there are also some schools of meditation that actually teach, well, you should actually read what the Buddha has taught, but what happens is they actually place more focus on books which were written after the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana. For example, like Abhidhamma, and also Visuddhimagga, instead of actually focusing the attention on suttas, they actually focus and place more authority on books which were written after the Buddha's Parinibbana as the authoritative text, for meditation. So it is actually against this context, that now our Buddhist community actually is in a situation that's actually very fragmented. Different teachers have different schools, So, that's why some Buddhists actually form this opinion. They have this view, that maybe it's not the right time now for me to meditate, since it's so confusing. Different schools teach different methods and different ways of meditation, and I'm not even sure, what is the right way, as taught by the Blessed One. Different teachers give conflicting views. Some say samatha is not good. It only leads you to Brahma world. Some say you only need to do vipassana, don't have to do samatha. And then the other end of the spectrum is some teachers actually teach, you must actually develop samatha to very high levels first. For example, you must have the 4 jhanas before you can actually practice vipassana. So a lot of Buddhists nowadays, they find that they are bombarded by all these different conflicting views, and they themselves are actually quite confused, as to what the right way, they should actually adopt, the right way of meditation that actually should be adopted, based on what the Buddha actually taught. In the more than 2,500 years ago, we've seen so many of these disciples of the Buddha, becoming, instantly enlightened, by becoming sotapannas or stream enterers, just by listening to what the Buddha actually said, or what the Buddha actually gave, in specific discourses, and straight away on the spot, something just lit up in them, and they became straight away they became stream enterers. So many Buddhists nowadays, perhaps they form the idea that, instead of going through this sea of conflicting teachings, why don't I just make a resolution, that I do a lot of good deeds now, but perhaps I'll meditate later, just defer it, and I made the aspiration that may I be able to be born in a country, when the next Buddha, the Buddha Metteyya comes, to our human world again. Let me make the aspiration, may I be reborn, in Jambudvipa, which is India, and let me be reborn perhaps as Devas in the Himalayas, so that when the next Buddha comes, I'll be able to meet next Buddha, and it makes my job much easier. I can just listen to what the next Buddha says and straight away become enlightened, instead of me having to struggle here, trying to find out what's the right way. So many Buddhists actually form this opinion that perhaps meditation is not for me, it's just too complicated. I don't know what the Buddha taught. Different teachers teach different things, So maybe I made a resolution, and practice meditation later. Let me defer it, let me postpone it, until then, when situations are more conducive, and situations are more favorable, for me to actually find, to discover and to find out the actual teaching or the actual meditation that was actually taught by the Blessed One. So we find it is actually again this backdrop, we find that many Buddhists actually find Dhamma practice as something they will do, when I have the time or when the situation is more favorable. Let me actually do it, when the conditions are more favorable, and when it comes to meditation, let me make the aspiration, to meet the next Buddha, then perhaps I may just meet the next Buddha, and I just have to listen to just very short discourses given by the Buddha, and straight there and then, I can become enlightened, as a Sotapanna, instead of wasting my effort, in this sea of different views given by different teachers nowadays. So it's against this backdrop, that I find maybe I should actually share the Dhamma with you, in terms of, the how we should actually practice Dhamma. Is it right for us to take the attitude that let me practice only when times are more favorable, and not until when the situations are more conducive? Or are we actually faced, in a very urgent situation that we need to actually practice the Dhamma right here and right now? So what does the Buddha actually say about this? So that is the whole objective of my sharing the Dhamma with you this morning. So for me to begin, let me just share my screen with you. Okay. Hold on. Okay, the first sutta that I'd like to share with you actually is it is actually a very interesting sutta extracted from Anguttara Nikaya 6.20, and this sutta actually focuses on this topic of mindfulness of death, Maranasati, which is actually a very important contemplation in the Buddhist spiritual path. And in this situation, the Buddha was actually staying in Nadika, in a brick hall. Then he actually addressed the monks, So actually in this sutta, the essence of this sutta is that the Buddha actually told the monks to actually constantly contemplate, day and night, in terms of how brief and uncertain our lives are. Of course, this sutta was actually given to the monks, but it's actually equally applicable, for lay people as well. So if you can read the lines shaded in yellow, the Buddha actually asked them to contemplate and reflect as such, many are the possible causes of my death. A snake might bite me, I might actually be stung by a scorpion. A centipede might bite me, that would be how my death will come about. That will be an obstruction for me, which means if any of these things happen, my life will end, and you'll be an obstruction, in my spiritual practice, in the practice of the Dhamma. Okay, so the Buddha says you must always think about the possibilities that happen. A snake might bite you, a scorpion might sting you, a centipede might bite you. Or I might actually fall, stumble and fall. Anytime. I might actually perhaps in the bathroom. I might just stumble and fall. And I might actually hurt my head. And because of that, death may come to me. Or it may also come about in terms of food that you have actually taken. Maybe you have taken some food, which is actually which cause a lot of wind in your stomach, and it causes a lot of indigestion, and because of that, you might actually have phlegm, and the wind forces might pierce through your body, and because of that, you might actually meet with death. So the Buddha says you must always contemplate that life itself is not something that you take for granted, that will always continue under old age, as what we will all what we actually hope for, that we will actually live to our ripe old age. But the Buddha says, every single day, you must actually collect your mind, and point your mind towards this contemplation, that there are many potential causes that may actually bring death about, death, that it's actually beyond expectation, So the Buddha says, if any of this were to happen, then it's an obstruction. Then the Buddha says here, you must actually think, are there any evil, unskillful mental qualities which are unabandoned by me? So, for example, if there's actually greed, hatred, or delusion that actually, is still in your mind, but you have actually met, that you might actually, that if you actually meet with any of these causes of death, then the Buddha says that it will be something that actually you should actually then double up your effort to try to abandon these unskillful qualities, because the Buddha says that death can actually come knocking on the door anytime. There's actually no bargaining and no appointment with death. Death can actually come knocking on the door anytime. And if you still have this kilesas in terms of all these unskillful and wholesome states of mind, in terms of the loba, dosa, moha, then you must actually quickly remove this. That very day itself, when you actually find any of these unskillful qualities in your mind, you must actually double up your effort, and abandon them, immediately. How immediate? The Buddha says it's just as when a person whose turban or head was on fire, that if you actually you wear a turban, and the turban or your head is on fire, you immediately extinguish the fire, right? Immediately you should actually try to extinguish your fire on the burning turban on the head. So the Buddha says that just like this, you must actually put in the extra effort and desire and the diligence to actually put out all whatever unskillful qualities which they are in your mind. Just like when your turban or your head is actually on fire, it is actually that urgent. It's actually that it actually warrants your immediate and urgent attention for you to actually put out and extinguish the turban and fire. So that's why from this sutta itself, the Buddha actually highlights that it's actually extremely important for us to contemplate at all times. That death can actually come knocking on the door anytime. There's actually you cannot make appointment with death, and we don't know when it might actually come. A lot of these possibilities that Buddha has actually painted. You might be bitten, you might actually stumble and fall, you might eat the wrong food, or you might actually be attacked, by unfriendly parties. The Buddha says here. So if this happens, it's just like the turban that's actually burning on your head. You must actually quickly extinguish it. So that's actually how urgent this the Dhamma practice is. The Buddha says. So that is actually the first sutta, that we should actually draw inspiration from. And again, in this AN 5.57, this sutta is actually called Subjects for Contemplation. Here, the Buddha actually tells the monks there are these 5 facts that one should actually reflect and contemplation upon, often, as much as you can, whether one is a woman or a man, lay or ordained, it doesn't matter. The Buddha says, which are these 5 facts that you must actually contemplate. The Buddha says, I'm subject to aging and I'm not beyond aging. This is the first fact that you must reflect often, whether you are a man or woman, whether you are a lay person or you're ordained. And I'm also subject to illness. I've not gone beyond illness. And I'm subject to death, have not gone beyond death. And I'll grow different, separate from all that's dear and appealing to me. Whatever that you hold dear to you, whatever that's favorable to you, these will actually grow separate from you one day. And I'm an owner of my own actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related through my actions, have actions as a relative, and also as my inheritance action. So the Buddha here actually talks about us bearing in mind the importance of karma, the karma that we have actually committed. Actually we are the owners of these karmas, and no one else, and we will actually be the inheritant. We inherit whatever karma that we have actually performed. So that's why the Buddha says that these are the 5 facts that we must always contemplate, at all times, frequently, that old age, sickness, and death will always come anytime without actually any warning to us. So that is another sutta, that we must actually also pay attention to, in terms of how urgent it is for our Dhamma practice. And if you actually read the suttas, in many suttas, the Buddha always highlights in terms of how precarious our position is, how dangerous us living as human beings in this world. I mean, that is so filled and fraught with uncertainties, and calamities and uncertainties, which are beyond our expectation, or when we least expect it. Here in AN 5.77, the Buddha actually talks about the discourse on future dangers. Here, again, the Buddha actually highlights, when to a monk, of course, it also applies to lay people as well. But here, in the context of a monk, the Buddha says that when the monk actually lives alone, in the forest, in the wilderness, you must always contemplate. A snake might bite you, a scorpion might sting you, a centipede might bite you. So, death may actually come about. Again, the Buddha also highlights the monk must also contemplate. The second paragraph here in yellow, you see, I might meet up, with a vicious beast, a lion or tiger or leopard or bear or hyena, they might take my life, and this is how my death will come about. Okay, this is the second danger that Buddha actually highlights. And the next one, if you look at the next paragraph here, the Buddha again highlight, that I might actually meet up with people, or bandits, on the way to committing crime, on their way back from committing crime, they might actually take my life. You might meet up with all these very evil people, as well as those who have actually just committed all these evil crimes. When they are on their way back, or they're about to commit their crime, you might actually meet with them, and they might also bring torture to you, and you might actually meet your death, just because you meet up with the wrong party at the wrong time. So the Buddha actually in this sutta actually again highlights to us, how important it is for us to always remind ourselves, that there is actually no certainty that we will actually have a very smooth and comfortable life. Anytime death might actually just come calling on us. Anytime. Whether it's external, or we might meet with all these ferocious animals. You might actually meet up with all these poisonous scorpions or snakes. Sometimes we don't know, centipedes, or we might just step on snakes, and snake might just bite. It could be a cobra, and you may just death, may just come because of that, because all these poisonous snakes are highly lethal, in terms of when you're bitten, the poison that actually are actually injected in you. You can never anticipate when this will happen. So the Buddha again highlights, in all these situations, we must always keep reminding ourselves that all these unfortunate events may happen to us. So this is actually the another sutta, 5.77, which the Buddha actually highlights, in terms of dangers. Again, you see the Buddha keeps highlighting this in various discourses given by him in AN 5.78. Again, here the Buddha highlights the danger of life in different contexts. Again, this is more internal. Just now was external, right? In terms of animals, in terms of meeting with bandits, we are meeting with ferocious beasts or poisonous animals. Here the Buddha actually talks about, even though you are actually young and black-haired, endowed with blessings of youth in the first stage of life, there will come a time, this body will be beset by old age. You become an old age. Your teeth will decay. You will not be able to stand well. Your bones will become rickety. So the Buddha says this is actually also another danger we are going to face as time goes by. Our lives are just like streams of water. The streams that you find that keep on flowing down, gushing down. There's no one moment in time where the water will stop flowing. Just like our lives, our lives will just keep on moving on. Like what the Buddha says, it is actually a dukkha. It's actually something that's actually very subtle, something that's very insidious that we don't know that's happening. But slowly but surely, we are actually growing old. And this is something that we cannot actually prevent. Old age is something that will come about. So actually, this is actually one danger that we must actually remind ourselves, because it's a dukkha. It's actually like it's actually what the Buddha call is actually the viparanama dukkha. Because our lives are conditioned. So that's why our bodies will actually will only change, but it will not only change, but it will deteriorate as well. Whether you become old, whether you become ill. So it's actually what we call the viparanama dukkha. Also because our bodies are actually conditioned. It's a sankata, something that's conditioned. So that's why the Buddha says that old age is one thing, and also the Buddha also reminds us again, that our body is also beset with illness anytime, without us knowing. sometimes we we may be actually be beset with illness, and we may be discomfort because of the wrong food we have eaten, or sometimes we may actually contract, the diseases and illnesses when we least expected, a lot of these chronic illnesses, that are actually life-threatening, and if these illnesses can be cured, I mean, all is well. But sometimes, when these illnesses they become too overwhelming, and even medical attention is not sufficient, then it is something that's due to our karma, we are not able to recover. That is also another danger we are going to face as well. All these life-threatening dangers and chronic illnesses that we face every day, constantly. Um, the pandemic itself has given us a very good example. I mean, we can have no control to it. We might contract diseases, we might be faced with pandemics, whether we like it or not, it's going to actually come, and come as a flood to us, and it will affect us, and it will actually severely impact our lives. So that is another danger itself, and of course, the Buddha again says, there's another danger as well, because there will come a time, where we have famine. Right now we may have lots of food to eat, right? Everything is fine, but there will come a time, where there may be famine, and even if it's not famine, we have seen ourselves due to wars, in various parts of the country, world, there's also this supply chain disruption, and because of that, we have high inflation, which affects our lives, and so it becomes much more difficult for us to get decent food. So there's also another danger as well. So the Buddha says our human lives are fraught with so many dangers and difficulties, that can we actually afford not to practice the Dhamma? Right here and right now, it's actually something that's very, very urgent. Just like our turban is actually on fire. When you're wearing a turban, it's on fire. I cannot imagine something more urgent than to put out the fire immediately. But this is exactly what the Buddha says. Your turban is on fire, and yet now you are taking a very what we call a nonchalant attitude. Means you don't really care about practice of Dhamma. So if we actually have that attitude, it's something that's actually very, very foolish, very silly. The Buddha said, you're a foolish man. So again, in this AN 5.79, you see the Buddha keeps on highlighting, in terms of the dangers. And in this sutta itself, the Buddha again highlights a different perspective of danger. In this sutta, if you read it, the Buddha actually highlights that there will come a time when monks will become very corrupt, and they will actually be undeveloped in terms of their in terms of their body, in terms of their virtue, in terms of their mind, in terms of discernment. So if in terms of the sila, samadhi, and panya, they will be very corrupt. These monks, they do not observe their vinaya. They don't observe their morality. They are undeveloped. And they behave not in accordance with the vinaya rules. And if you see here, the Buddha says there will come a time when these monks they will not actually want to listen to what the Buddha has actually taught. They do not, which means there will come a time when monks they do not want to read the suttas anymore. They find the suttas they find that they don't place emphasis on what the Buddha has taught as recorded in the suttas. They find that, oh, actually that's just theoretical, not so complex and complicated like what we find in other literatures or books written after the Buddha's parinibbana. And if you look at this, the Buddha's prediction is actually very true. We are actually seeing this happening right here and right now. And when you find certain schools of Buddhism actually teach that you should that suttas actually only provide you the theories only, but when it comes to the actual meditation, the actual practical advice, you should actually read books such as Abhidhamma or Visuddhimagga. But all these books were written by monks after the Buddha's parinibbana. So we must actually take heed, of what the Buddha actually says by placing the wrong attention, in terms of the wrong teachings, by looking at other books rather than what the Buddha has taught, in the suttas. So again, we see this is another danger, but we are already seeing this happening right now. Okay, and again, the Buddha says, there'll come a time where the monks, they'll live very luxurious life. They're very lethargic, very lazy. They fall back. They shirk their responsibilities of solitude instead of actually going for solitude, meditation in forests. They actually like to congregate, with lay people. They like to go to cities. They like to have social activities. And mix with lay people. And like to actually lead a gregarious life, as monks, and they don't like solitude lives. So when you actually come a situation when you see the Sangha, in such a situation, then how are you going to practice the Dhamma then, and I find a lot of people actually make the aspiration, may I come back to human lives again, You see what the Buddha has actually forecast in terms of dangers going forward. You still want to come back to this world where the monks are all misbehaving, teaching corrupt Dhamma, and very lazy, they do not practice the Dhamma, and they teach you, not the suttas, but other books, ask you to read other books, which are more flowery compared to suttas, So you see, the Buddhas already are forecasting, the Buddha has actually foreseen all this will actually happen, and in fact, this is actually is already unfolding, and you see here again, this AN.50, the Buddha continues to describe the corrupt monks in the future. Monks in the future, they actually they are desirous of fine robes. They actually crave for fine robes. They find, oh, my robe is not nice. Very coarse. Very tattered. Already sewn so many times. I want to have fine robes, maybe silky robes. Maybe robes which are are very comfortable, made of fine materials, and I crave for all these, qualities of robes which are made of, khasi cloth, maybe, silk, silky cloth, and they also crave for fine food, they don't like actually food collected from alms round. They find that, oh, that's actually so coarse, not delicious at all, not to my liking, not favorable to my palate, I don't like it, I crave for nice fine food, delicious with all the condiments, with all the flavors, and they want to move to towns and cities, taking up residence there, searching for tip-top taste, Look at this sentence here. The Buddha says that these monks look for tip-top taste at the tip of the tongue. For the sake of food, they will do many kinds of unseemly, inappropriate things. So in future, the Buddha projects and he foresees that the Sangha will become like that. And the Buddha says, furthermore, in the course of the future, there will be monks desirous of lodgings. They find that, oh, my kuti is too small. It's so basic. I want a bigger cottage, or maybe I want a double-story lodging, and I want maybe air condition. It's so hot, I want a water heater as well, I want all the comfort of the lodging, So in future, monks will become very, very desirous, they're full of craving, full of greed for all this, And here the Buddha again says that in the course of the future, there will be monks who live in close association with nuns, female probationers, and female novices. These monks, they want to live close to the nuns. They want to interact with the female novices, the upasikas. They want to actually interact with them. And also there'll be monks. You look at the last paragraph, they want to live close association with monasteries, attendants, and novices. They want to interact, and they want to have more social interactions, with novices and monasteries, attendants. So the Buddha says that in future you're going to be faced with all these declined sangha, deteriorated sangha, and the Buddha has painted vividly, on what these monks might do, and we are slowly seeing all these dangers unfolding right before our eyes. If you observe some of these, some monks in some countries, in especially some countries in, like, for example, Thailand or Burma or what, they are being supported by the followers, so much so their lodgings are like, palaces, full of, some even have cars, TVs and all this. So if you look at this, the Buddha has really foreseen that this will happening. And would you be able to practice the Dhamma? By then you have to ask yourself that question. And you made the aspiration to come back again to this world. Will you be able to practice the Dhamma with the Sangha like this? Would you be able to develop yourself spiritually in terms of your Dana, Sila, and Bhavana? You have to ask yourself that question very, very carefully. That's what the Buddha says now. It's like your turban is on fire. Do it now. Practice it now. So the Buddha, if you look at the suttas, the Buddha has highlighted to us so many suttas in terms of how urgent it is for us to practice. Again, in this SN 3.25, Samyutta Nikaya 3.25, the Buddha actually likens that the old age and sickness are actually coming and are invading us like 4 mountains which are coming from the 4 directions. This is actually what the Buddha actually told this King Pasenadi. This Buddha told this King Pasenadi, he's a king of the Kosala kingdom. He actually told this king that there are these 4 mountains which are coming, from 4 directions, north, south, east, west, coming, and they're closing towards you, like what you normally see in movies, right? When someone is trapped, in a dungeon, and then the walls are closing on you, right? And you're being squeezed until you die, right? So the Buddha actually in this sutta actually uses the same simile, that you are actually there are 4 mountains, huge mountains which are coming from 4 directions, and they're closing towards you, and you can't run away. So this is actually what the Buddha says, that old age and sickness are just like these 4 mountains. So that's why the Buddha tells this king, that because of this, you should actually practice the Dhamma, right here and right now. And this king is a very wise king, and he himself actually says, yes, indeed, this aging and death are rolling in on me, Bante. What else could be done, but for Dhamma conduct, right conduct, skillful deeds, and meritorious deeds. The Buddha, this king actually tells the Buddha, what's the use, of having all these noble warrior kings, which are actually intoxicated with sovereignty. They have all these cavalry battles, they have all these armies, all these weaponry, they have all these chariot battles, infantry battles, all the elephants and horses, they're able to go for battles. Can all this actually protect you, when you actually are beset by old age and sickness and death? What's the use of all these armies, which the kings are surrounded by all these weaponry and infantry, all these armies and all the spears and everything that you have, to fight wars. But actually, this old age and sickness are actually closing in on you, just like the 4 mountains. So that's why the Buddha again highlights it's extremely, extremely urgent for us to practice the Dhamma here and now. Again, in SN 20.6, you see so many suttas, the Buddha again highlights, over and over again how difficult, how precarious, how dangerous our lives are now, right now in this human realm. That you must actually make sure you make the resolution to practice now, or else you regret it. You don't wait until next, when you make the resolution to come back again to this world, as human being to practice. It may be too late. Look at what all the predictions that the Buddha is painted now in terms of what's going to happen in the future, all the dangers, and in this sutta, the Buddha tells this monks, the Buddha was actually in Savatthi, and he tells the monks, faster than the speed of this man. Actually, in this sutta, the Buddha actually talks about this simile of this man. When someone actually flies an arrow towards this man is so swift, he's able to catch that arrow, before the arrow even hits him, he's able to catch that arrow right with his fist. So the Buddha says, faster than the speed of that man is the speed of the sun and moon, and faster than the speed of that man and sun and moon is the speed of the devas who rush ahead of sun and moon. Devas, they travel very, very fast. When the time taken for you to extend your arm or to contract your arm, the deva already disappears from, say, Tavatimsa, and already in Jetavana Grove. So that's how fast devas travel. And he said faster than the speed of this deva is the speed is the force of life one's lifespan coming to an end. You see how dramatic the Buddha actually paints this danger, this how brief our life is. The Buddha says faster than all these is a force of one's lifespan coming to an end. It's just like a candle that's being burned, the wick. It just keeps on burning. The longer you live by 1 year, the shorter your life has become by another year. The fact that you have lived for another 5 or 10 years, your life has actually been shortened by the corresponding 5 and 10 years. This is actually what we call, the Buddha says, a force of one's lifespan coming to an end. We are actually, all of us are moving towards one common destiny, which is what? Which is actually death, right? The moment we are born, we have only one common destiny. We are all moving towards that direction, which is actually to the cemetery. And this is what we actually say is the force of one's lifespan coming to an end. The Buddha is actually telling the monks that this is actually what's happening, and as lay people, we must also take heed of this. That this speed is faster than the Deva speed, because we don't know, but actually that's how fast, our lifespan is. And again, the Buddha, in this SN 2.19, this conversation in Rajagaha, at the time, there was this Deva who actually visited the Buddha, and there was this conversation between the Buddha and the Deva. And this Deva says, life is swept along and next to nothing is spent. For one swept by aging, no shelters exist. Perceiving danger in health, in death, one should do deeds of merit that brings about bliss. So this Deva also knows, actually our lives, whether we are human or whether we are Devas, actually there will come a time when we all need to depart. There's actually no fixed abode where we can be there forever. Even Devas, they can live for 9 million years, 36 million years, eons, but there will come a time, where the alarm clock will ring and they will need to leave, So the Buddha, that's why this Deva, he tells the Buddha, there's actually nothing that's so satisfactory about existence. This danger in death, it can come anytime, and the Buddha responds by saying, yes, life is swept along, next to nothing is in span, not for one swept to old age, no shelters exist. Perceive this danger in death, one should drop the world's bait. Do not actually be so attracted and so being charmed and mesmerized by all the baits in this world that you lose track, and you succumb to all these baits, and the Buddha said you must look for peace. Look for peace. Instead of just doing merits, you must make sure you look for peace. What else? What is peace? Peace means what? You must meditate. You must actually achieve, the equanimous mind, that is unshaken by all the calamities or all the vicissitudes in life. You must actually, make sure you actually have this peace when we supported by wisdom. So again, the Buddha actually tells this Deva, okay, merit is important, but make sure you also meditate. So that's why, in so many suttas, the Buddha, just keeps on repeating, and highlighting to us, we must really practice now. Don't wait until, you miss the boat, then that's where the danger comes, and, you might find, but you might not find another second chance. And here in this Theragatha, 6.13, again, this monk actually also says, attacked by death is this world, surrounded by aging, beset by arrow of craving, always obscured by desire, and in this world, we are actually encircled by aging. There's no shelter, and this death, aging, and illnesses are just like the three masses of flames which are actually burning us, and there's no strength to confront them, and there's no speed to run away. So the Buddha, so that this monk says, make the day not in vain, a little or a lot. How a little or a lot? However much the day passes, that's how much less is life. Same thing that this monk is saying as what the Buddha said earlier. How many days have passed, is equivalent to how much less in life you have. So the last day, your last day approaches. This isn't your time to be heedless. So all these, of course, are what the monks actually mentioned, but equally applicable, for humans as well. Okay. And again, in Udana 5.2, we find this interesting conversation between the Buddha, and Venerable Ananda, So there was one time the Buddha was actually in this Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery, Then Venerable Ananda, right, he actually emerged from his seclusion late afternoon, and then he actually went to the Blessed One, and this Venerable Ananda, he actually told the Buddha, he says, as he sat down and he told the Blessed One, it's amazing, Bhante, it's astounding how short-lived the Blessed One's mother was. This Queen Maya, right, we know. And then and this Venerable Ananda said 7 days after the Blessed One's birth, Queen Maya actually died and reappeared among the Tusita Devas, Tusita Devas, contented Devas. So we see from here, the Venerable Ananda told Buddha, how amazing this Queen Maya, who was actually the Buddha's mother, passed away after 7 days after the Buddha was born. And then the Buddha says that that's the way it is, Ananda. That's the way it is. For mothers of bodhisattvas are short-lived. The Buddha says, if a bodhisattva comes to the world for the last time, to be the Buddha from Tusita heaven, the mothers of bodhisattvas are short-lived. All the bodhisattvas, the mothers are short-lived. 7 days after the bodhisattva's birth, the bodhisattva's mother passes away and reappear among the Tusita Devas. So on realizing the significance of this, that's why the Buddha actually gave this Udana, this inspired uttering. The Buddha says, those who have come to be, those who will be, all will go. We just read this very carefully. Those who have come to be means we have all here, and those who will be means those who will be born later in future. All will go, all will have to go, leaving the body behind. The skillful person realizing the loss of all should live the holy life ardently. So the Buddha, in this inspired Udana, he says that all of us will need to leave one day or another. This is our common destiny. Death, is a common destiny we all have. So when there's birth, there's death. This is something that is an indisputable truth. That nobody can dispute or argue. So the Buddha says, realizing this, you must actually practice the spiritual life ardently. You must practice the Dhamma. Okay. So again, why does the Buddha says, that our lives are so uncertain, right? Why is it that the Buddha, warns us to actually practice the Dhamma now? We can see that from SN 15.9, what we call the stick sutta, Danda sutta. Here in this sutta, in essence, the Buddha is actually saying that this samsara is inconceivable beginning and inconceivable will be the end. So when beings travel in this samsara, when we are born from one existence to another existence, we are just like a stick. Just look at the line of a tree here, just as a stick thrown up in the air, land sometimes in its base, sometimes in its side, sometimes in its tip, sometimes you don't know when where the stick will land. So the Buddha says in the same way, beings are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. We actually travel in this samsara just like the stick. We don't know when where we'll be born. Sometimes we'll be born as humans, sometimes we're born as devas. Sometimes we are not so fortunate. We fall down to the woeful plains. And in one sutta also, if you actually read it carefully, the Buddha also says just because someone has actually been doing a lot of good deeds, perhaps observing dana, sila, but this person, is not a stream enterer yet. There's actually no guarantee that this person would necessarily be a deva in the next life or human, because it all depends on the karmic, energy that actually is operative then, because all the karmas actually jostle for this rebirth linking consciousness, right? In terms of when the next life will be. So we don't know when this which operative karma will actually come into play. So if it happens to be a wholesome karma, then you'll be reborn as a deva. But if it's unwholesome, then you'll become an animal or a ghost, or even in the hell. So that's why the Buddha again actually tells us how important it is for us to actually practice, because it's because otherwise we're just like a stick, that's actually being thrown around. Okay, and then okay, and then again, in SN 35.82, the Buddha again actually tells us that this world, is actually not permanent, it actually everything will disintegrate. So this Buddha tells this monk, say the world is said. In what respect does the word world apply? So the Buddha says the word world applies in so far as it disintegrates. This world itself disintegrates. And what is this world? The world actually is what? It's actually our five aggregates, our form, in terms of our feelings, our perceptions, in terms of volitional formations, in terms of consciousness. So these five aggregates are basically what we call the world, and these five aggregates, actually will disintegrate and they will actually perish one day. So if you think about it, the world actually it actually exists because of the five aggregates, right? So that's why the Buddha says this world itself is just the five aggregates, and and is actually subject to perish, and disintegration. And again, there's another sutta also you may refer to it, when you have the time. In AN 7.70, the Buddha actually talks about this. Some time ago, the Buddha tells the monks that there was this teacher, this Araka, who was actually free from passion, and free from sensual pleasures, and he had many students, and he actually taught the Dhamma, that our human life as humans are actually very trifling, very filled with stress and many despairs, and how does he actually describe the human life? Human life is just like a dewdrop on the tip of a blade of a grass that actually vanishes with the rising of the sun. So that is one description. And the second one, the Buddha says, it's just when the rain devas send rain in fat drops, and the bubble of the water quickly vanishes, and does not stay long. This is a second description as a human life. Just like, when the rain actually falls into the pool or pond of water, you have these water bubbles, right? So our lives are just like the bubbles in the water, just stay there for a while and then pop, they disappear. And then again, this Araka also actually says that our human lives are just like a line drawn in the water with a stick. If you draw a line in the water, quickly it vanishes. And our life is just like also like a river flowing down from the mountain. It's swift, and it's gushing down all the while, never stopping for a moment. Just like our human lives, our lives are just moving on and on. Ever since we are born, of course we go through different stages. We grow up, we become adolescents, we become adults, we age, and then it's just rushing on. There's actually no single moment in time where our lives will stop. So it's all rushing towards one single direction, which is actually towards the direction of death. And of course, this Araka also says it's just like a man, strong man, spitting, dropping a spit at the tip of his tongue. Spit, when this man, he actually spits out with little effort. The Buddha says that this human life is just like a drop of spit, so trifling, so insignificant and so trifling. And of course, the last one, this similarly, our life is just like this meat thrown into an iron pan, heated, quickly vanishes, and does not stay for a long time. This silver of meat thrown into an iron pan, heated all day, quickly vanishes. So from here, you see, the Buddha actually describes so many. He actually describes to the monks what this Araka actually taught in terms of how brief our human lives are. So that's why we see, it's actually very important for us to practice our Dhamma, right now, right here and right now. There's actually no room for us to defer any further. And if you actually look at what the Buddha actually describes in terms of our destinies, in terms of where we are reborn, if you look at all the different suttas like this one in SN 20.2, the Buddha says here, in the same way, sentient beings who are reborn as humans are few, while those who are not reborn as humans are many. You see, again, the Buddha says, if you are a human being, and if you want to be born again as a human, the Buddha says it's actually very, very few. Just like he picks up a little dirt under his fingernail compared to the whole entire earth in the world. The Buddha says, which is more, the little dirt in my fingernail or the entire earth in the world? Of course, the dirt in his fingernail is so minuscule, right? So little. So the Buddha says, just like the dirt in his fingernail, the number of sentient beings born as human beings after passing away as human beings are so few. And even if you are born as a human being, the Buddha in this 56.62 SN actually says that even if you are born as human beings, those human beings which are born in central countries like India or where, in Buddhist countries are few, while those who are reborn in borderlands, in non-Buddhist countries, in the strange barbarian tribes, there's so many of others who are born in countries which are non-Buddhist, and they practice different religions, different rituals, which end up, doing a lot of unwholesome deeds, which actually chain you further and further away, in the woeful plains and also in samsara. So, how dreadful it is, or not? If you, as it is, it's so difficult to be born as human beings, yet, even if you're born as human beings, it's actually very rare that you get born in Buddhist countries and you get to learn the Dhamma, but most people, will actually be born in non-Buddhist countries, or even countries, which practice all sorts of rituals, which actually bring a lot of harm to ourselves, So again, in so many of these suttas, you see, again, the Buddha says here, very few humans are born as humans. About those humans are born in who are born in hell are many. So after the human pass away, in terms of those who are born in hell are many compared to those being reborn as human again. See, again in this sutta also 56103, the Buddha also says, those who are remain as humans are a very small number, but those who actually reborn in animal realms are so many. Okay, and 5.104, again, the Buddha says those human reborn as ghosts are far outweigh those who will remain as humans. Again, the Buddha says here, those who are gods, they are devas, but they continue to remain as devas, also very few, just like dirt in his fingernails. Okay. And those who are gods, and then they are actually reborn as humans are also very few. But those devas, they are reborn in hell, animal, and ghosts are many, many, which means they actually fall straight from deva realms and down into the woeful plains are so many, so many. And how about those who, here the Buddha talks about those who die in hell, they pass away from hell, So to be reborn from hell as humans are very few, but those who are reborn in hell, animal, and ghosts are many. So we see how difficult it is for you to actually ascend back as humans. And once you are there in hell, you continue to be either reborn in the hell as animals, or as ghosts. So for you to actually break out from these woeful plains and become human again, the Buddha says it's very, very rare. And again, those who are born and die in hell and are reborn as gods are very, very few. How is it possible, that those who are die in hell, how likely is it they'll be reborn as devas directly? It's very, very rare. Because of all the unwholesome deeds they have done, they come in bunches. So they actually ripen one after another. So after you die in hell, so to become a deva is exceedingly difficult. To become as humans is very difficult. What more to become as devas is even more difficult. But many are born after they are born. They die. They pass away from hell. They continue to be in hell, or or in animal realms, as well as in ghost realm. Again, in this sutta, the Buddha talks about those who die as animals, but to be reborn as animals, reborn as humans, also very, very rare. But they continue to be reborn in hell, in the woeful plains, as ghosts, as well as in in the animal realms. So again, you see how difficult it is for you to actually break from that chain. Once you actually end up in woeful planes, the energy, the energy is so strong that you keep on being reborn as a woeful planes. It's very, very rare and difficult for you to be reborn as human or as devas again. And of course, in this sutta, the Buddha talks about those animals who die, pass away, they become gods, straight away. Also very, very rare, very, very rare. But they continue to be in the woeful planes as ghosts on hell or animals. And of course, the same thing here. The Buddha talks about those who are petas, but for them to be reborn as human beings straight away, from petas, also very rare, but most of them actually end up in hell, animals, and petas again. So if you see from all these, again, of course, this one is all about ghosts, they to be reborn as gods again, also very, very rare. It means as peta, you actually reborn as deva straight away, also actually very rare, but many actually they actually die as ghosts and reborn as ghosts, So that's why the Buddha says you must actually practice the Dhamma, right here and right now, so that you actually protect yourselves, from descending into the woeful planes. Because once you end up in the woeful planes, it's very, very difficult for you to get out and actually extract yourself out from the woeful planes, and become human or devas again. And even if you're a human or deva, make sure you retain your position, and do not actually fall down into the woeful planes, So that's why the Buddha says, the Buddha actually says to be reborn is something that's actually very, very it's actually a lot of suffering, That's why in this Anguttara Nikaya, if you read this Anguttara Nikaya book of 3, chapter 3, if you refer to this Sutta 328, the Buddha actually says, just as monks, even a tiny bit of feces still stings, still I don't approve of even a tiny bit of continued existence, even for as long as a finger snap, which means that the Buddha says to be reborn is just like, having even a tiny bit of feces, that still stings, that is actually so that's foul smelling, that he doesn't even like even a continued existence, or even as long as a finger snap, that because of what? Because of all these continued, samsara itself, there's no certainty, and there's actually no certainty and no guarantee, that you actually, be able to remain, as in favorable conditions. The conditions keep changing, depending on the karmic energy that you perform, it keeps on changing, and there's actually no certainty, there's actually no everlasting shelter and also refuge that you can provide, that you have, that you can say, oh, finally I'm safe, I no longer have to go through all this anymore. That's what the Buddha says. It's just like feces, to be in samsara, it's just like to see the feces, to have feces with you. And again, in 329 and 332, this Buddha actually says, just as even a tiny bit of urine, and spit and pus and blood still stings, I don't approve, of existence, not even a finger snap. So the Buddha actually asks us to quickly, to get out, try to actually get out from samsara, as soon as you can. Having one moment in samsara is just like having feces and having urine and spit and pus and blood. That's how unfavorable and how stinky it is. So that's why the Buddha says, the Buddha says it's very important, for us to actually practice, and how do you actually ensure, that and how do you ensure, that we actually get ourselves, out of samsara, and the only way that we can actually do this is actually by looking at this Samyutta Nikaya 56.51, that the Buddha says the only way that we can actually get ourselves out of this samsara, the very first thing you should do, is for a person, who actually has he's actually accomplished in view, and what more, that he only has up to 7 lives in this samsara. Such a person truly understands about suffering, about origin, and about cessation, about the path. So that's why the Buddha says, you know, if one has become a Sotapanna, right, a stream enterer, right? So if the life is only up to 7 lives, you know, so the Buddha says that the suffering that he has is just like the dirt in his fingernail compared to the whole earth. So in this case, we know for us to get out of samsara, the first thing we must practice, you know, is what? To become a Sotapanna, right? And how do we actually become a Sotapanna? You know, the only thing that we need to do to become a Sotapanna, a stream enterer, you know, is what we can see from this Itivuttaka number 60. You know, we must actually practice what? The 3 grounds of meritorious activity, which is what? Which is Dana, Sila, and Bhavana. Okay, so these are the three items that we must actually practice. Okay, and of course, dana itself, I've already explained in quite detail, you know, in terms of importance. You must actually do dana. You know, if you do dana, then you actually outshine others in terms of, you know, in terms of your longevity, beauty, you know, in terms of your authority, in terms of your, you know, happiness, you know. So all these, you know, I've already explained in this AN 5.31 before, you know, where the Buddha tells this Princess Sumana how important dana is, but provided your sila, you know, is actually it's impeccable, you know, you protect your sila, you know, and because as what we can see from this AN 10.177, if you actually do sila, do a lot of dana, but you don't actually protect your sila, you know, then of course, you know, then you end up, you know, as in the animal realm, you know, but you know, like all these royal elephants, and you know, and royal stallions, you know, then you know you have all the luxuries in life, you know, but you actually end up in the animal realm, you know, because you don't practice your sila. So dana and sila are very important, and what we can see, you know, and of course sila, as I mentioned to you before, remember not to actually perform these 10 unwholesome actions in terms of stealing, you know, killing, stealing, you know, sexual misconduct, you know, speaking falsehood, diffusive speech, you know, harsh speech, you know, in terms of gossiping, idle chatter, in terms of craving, in terms of this mind of ill will that want others to be killed, you know, and also holding wrong views. So these are the 10 unwholesome actions, you know, 10 unwholesome actions that must not be done, because once you do it, then you actually have create the potential for you to be reborn in the woeful plains. Okay, so that is actually in terms of our sila, you know, so we must make sure, you know, we practice. And of course, the Buddha also mentions that we must also practice our 8 precepts on Upo Saturdays. And in terms of bhavana, you know, like I mentioned before, okay, Usata days now, okay. And also in terms of in terms of this in terms of wisdom, you know, like I mentioned to you, when we practice meditation, you know, to cultivate meditation, we must actually always be mindful that there is this sutta. Okay, the sutta itself, it's actually from SN 22.122, you know, that actually tells us, you know, in order for us to become a sotapanna, you know, we must actually contemplate the 5 aggregates, like what I mentioned before, in terms of looking at the body, the feelings, you know, volitional formations, you know, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. So if you actually can contemplate these 5 aggregates, you know, then you actually can become a sotapanna. Okay. And again, in this AN 4.45 again, you know, the Buddha also tells Rohitasa, you know, this Deva, to also contemplate these 5 aggregates. So actually, how do we actually contemplate the 5 aggregates? You know, the 5 aggregates, you know, if you can contemplate the 5 aggregates by looking at the 6 sense basis, what we actually can see from SN 35.53, you know, like I mentioned before, whenever you meditate, meditation does not even have to be, you know, when you actually sit cross-legged, you know, and you know, and focusing, you know, on your breath, you know, or rising, falling, you know, you can actually meditate anytime, you know, by actually fixing your attention on the your mindfulness on your 6 sense doors, you know, in terms of your eyes, your nose, your tongue, your ear, your body, as well as your mind. So whenever that comes to contact with your mind, whenever that comes to contact with your eye, you must actually you must actually be mindful. How does the mind react, to this to this sense object. Is there actually loba, dosa, moha, in your mind itself. So whenever you actually sense there's actually loba, dosa, moha in you, you then have to actually investigate, how this loba, dosa, moha arise through causes and conditions. And of course, before you actually able to meditate, you must actually calm yourself by doing samatha. Then once you're calm, then you do vipassana. Okay, so that's why you must actually watch your mind, very carefully. You must actually watch your mind, to make sure that you are aware, what actually comes to your mind. Just like what the Buddha actually says in this 3.105 in terms of this peak of the roof. It's just like a roof. If it's not properly attached, then of course, the house will actually be leaking, and because it's not properly attached, the roof is not properly attached. So it's the same as our mind. We must actually constantly watch our mind, to actually see what actually arises in the mind, in terms of loba, dosa, moha, and in this SN 35.152, the Buddha says that just by watching your mind, you can actually become an arahant. So that's why we must actually in our day-to-day lives, we must actually place our attention in the six sense doors. Whatever sense object that come into our six sense spaces, just be mindful, how our mind reacts to it. Is there actually greed? Is there actually anger? Is there any delusion? Once any of these defilements arise in your mind, you become aware of it, just like what the Buddha teaches in Satipatthana, in the Citta Nupassana, right? You actually become aware of what actually happens in loba, whenever there's actually greed, hatred, delusion. Be aware of it, and then from there you actually contemplate the six sense bases as well as the five aggregates. For example, if somebody says something bad about you, you feel very angry, so that anger has arisen. Then from there, anger, why does it arise? Oh, it's actually because of unpleasant feeling. And how does this unpleasant feeling arise? Oh, it's actually because of the thought I have. Why does this person speak so badly about me? Why does he speak so ill about me, which is not true? And why does this thought arise? Because of perception. You perceive that somebody has spoken about you. And how does this perception happen? Oh, because it's actually due to hearing consciousness, ear consciousness. And how does this ear consciousness arise? Oh, it's because of this ear coming in contact with the sound, And that's why with the interplay of these causes and conditions, the anger arises. So if you can see from here, anger actually is something empty. There's actually nothing substantive about anger. It's just a mirage. So the Buddha actually highlights this over and over again. In terms of, for example, if you actually look at this MN 146, in terms of this 6 sets of 6, that's what the Buddha actually asks us to do. Contemplate the 6 sense doors, so we can see how important 6 sense doors are, because through the 6 sense doors we can actually contemplate the 5 aggregates, and how these 5 aggregates arise through causes and conditions. And from there we see there's actually nothing permanent about this anger that we have in our mind, and because of that it is actually empty. It's actually non-self. So from there you'll be able to realize non-self. So if you can actually practice this on a daily basis, whether you're working or whether you're doing a house chores, and you don't even have to wait until you find block leave to go on a meditation retreat. You can actually do meditation anytime. It's what we call the dynamic samadhi. It's not the static samadhi where you actually sit down cross-legged, and watch your breath or watch your abdomen, rising and falling. It's not the static samadhi, but it's a dynamic samadhi where you can do it even with your eyes open. You can see anything that comes into your sense doors, how you react to it. Is there loba, dosa, moha? Contemplate with it, and try to actually uproot all the kilesas you have, and through the realization of non-self. So if you can do this, the Buddha says, from this sutta SN 5.15, Sutta Nipata 5.15, the Buddha says, if you can regard the world as empty, having removed any view in terms of self, this way, one is above and beyond death. One who regards the world in this way isn't seen by the Death's King, isn't seen by Mara. So if you can actually do this continuously, in your practice, in your meditation, then you are actually practicing in accordance with the Dhamma, and the Buddha has actually given us such a wonderful guidance in terms of how we should practice meditation. Through the various suttas you can see, everything has been given to us. Is so systematically laid out. How we should practice. To remove lobha, dosa, moha, and all the kilesa. So now the ball has been thrown back to us. It's up to our responsibility, our duty now to practice it wholeheartedly, and don't wait until in your next life only you start worrying about doing this, making the aspiration do, because by then, as what the Buddha says, the conditions you have in the human realm or as the Deva realm may not be favorable for you. There's no certainty that you feel you face with all these favorable conditions anymore. The Sangha at that time may not be practicing well, may be corrupt. The teachings may actually not be there anymore. And the true Dhamma may not be there anymore, and by the time, if you happen to be reborn in the age of darkness, then it's rather unfortunate for you, you've made the aspiration, but you end up in the wrong time, so right now, right here and right now, practice well, try to strive to practice, to see non-self, in all conditioned phenomena, such that you're able to overcome this Sakaya Ditti, which is actually the identity view, by actually seeing non-self. So if you continue doing this, then hopefully, before one's life expires, one will become a stream enterer. So by then, you have purchased the best insurance you can have in this world, which is become a stream enterer, which means if you become a stream enterer, the only destination you have is either in the Deva realm or even in the human realm. And even in the human realm, you belong to the higher echelon, of people, very rich, and also, very high status, and woeful plains are close to you. You can never be reborn anymore, in the, as a ghost, as an animal, or in the hell. All these are already close. You cannot possibly descend into the woeful plains. And even as Deva and human is only up to 7 lives. So can you imagine how wonderful it is? This is the only sure guarantee you have, to actually be able to practice the Dhamma, and you have the unshakable faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, means not just the normal faith, but the confirmed experiential faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha that you will never regress. It follows you from life to life. For some reason, the Dhamma will still look for you. You'll still be able to actually be able to meet the Dhamma again. As a human, as a Deva. And from there, you'll continue practice up to 7 lives. And from there, you'll be able to become Arhanship, achieve Arhanship and get out of samsara. So that's why from all these suttas, I hope hopefully from this Dhamma sharing, I hope I've given you enough of reminders, as well as in terms of what the Buddha has actually warned us and reminded us that we must practice right here and right now in this very life, and do not wait until when you hope conditions are more favorable, or by making aspirations to meet the next Buddha. By then, whether you meet or not, it's not your control. Okay, it's actually dependent on how what sort of karma you have committed, you have actually performed, and a lot more other factors, causes, conditions, which are beyond your control. And by then, you may just miss the boat, and you may not be able to meet with the true Dhamma. And really, if that happens, then everything would have wasted, and you would have actually lived your life as a human being in vain. So with this, I hope that we all of us will put in the extra effort, and to strive towards the practice of Dhamma, so that we can progress, gradually, but surely, to attain the different stages of enlightenment, such that we can actually escape, from this inconceivable beginning and inconceivable ending, on this samsara that has no beginning and no end, that we're going to suffer, continuously, due to craving and due to ignorance, that we have actually been tricked all this while, into believing, and not seeing the Four Noble Truths, that we keep on, going round and round, just like animals, the dog are going round and round the on a leash, on this strong post, not seeing the intrinsic truth in all conditioned phenomena. That's why they will keep on going around. But with this, hopefully, we hope that, we'll be able to put in that effort, achieve the liberation, and then get off samsara the soonest we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Loo, for this extensive sharing. Now let's dedicate some merits to all beings, whether they are seeing and unseen. Hopefully they rejoice with all the goods that we have done. Akasata cha bummata devanaga mahitika punyang tam anumoditva chiram rakantu loka sasanang ettavata amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe buddha sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyachayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyachayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyachayo. And aspirations. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, please go to the links below. A reminder again, next week there won't be any Sunday Pūjā or Dhamma sharing. See you all again soon. Bye-bye.